Alistair Sterling, the cold-blooded titan of the tech industry, stood in the center of his gleaming penthouse, a cruel smirk playing on his lips as he held a worn leather bag over a silver trash bin. With a sudden violent jerk, he emptied the contents into the waste, watching with satisfaction as cheap keys, a simple wallet, and a handful of crumpled receipts fell into the garbage. He looked at the woman standing before him, a dignified black woman in a maid's uniform, and sneered that in his world there was no room for trash or the people who carried it. But his triumph vanished instantly when a crisp, official-looking document from a genetic laboratory fluttered out of the bag and landed face-up on the floor. As Alistair's eyes scanned the names on the paper, his face turned a ghostly shade of white, and the room fell into a suffocating silence. Before we continue with this shocking story of secrets and justice, I want to take a moment to welcome all of you to the channel. We are so glad you are here to share this journey with us. We would love to know more about our incredible community, so please tell us in the comments where you are watching from today. What city or country are you tuning in from? Also, if you enjoy stories about truth coming to light, please take a second to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button right now. Your support helps us bring more of these powerful stories to life, and we don't want you to miss a single moment of what happens next. The evening air in the city was crisp, but inside the Sterling penthouse, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the sound of shallow laughter. Maya moved through the crowd with the grace of a gazelle, her dark skin glowing under the soft amber lights of the massive crystal chandeliers. She carried a silver tray of vintage champagne, her movements so fluid and silent that she seemed almost invisible to the elite guests gathered there. This was the world of the ultra-rich, a world where people like Maya were often treated as nothing more than part of the furniture. Maya had been working for Alistair Sterling for 6 months, enduring his sharp tongue and his constant attempts to belittle her. She was a woman of few words, performing her duties with a precision that even the most demanding employer couldn't fault. However, Alistair didn't want a perfect employee. He wanted someone he could break, someone who would flinch at his shadow. There was something about Maya's calm, something about the way she looked at the portrait of his late father, that unnerved him deeply. The portrait of Arthur Sterling hung prominently in the grand hallway, a man known for his kindness and his mysterious disappearance years ago. Whenever Maya thought no one was looking, she would pause in front of that painting, her eyes filling with a mixture of longing and hidden knowledge. Alistair had noticed this habit, and it fueled a growing resentment within him, a suspicion he couldn't quite name. He hated the way she carried herself, as if she possessed a secret that made his billions seem insignificant. On this particular night, the occasion was a massive merger that would make Alistair the most powerful man in the tech sector. He was surrounded by sycophants and business rivals, all vying for a moment of his time, but Alistair's focus was elsewhere. His eyes tracked Maya as she navigated the room, looking for a reason, any reason at all, to humiliate her in front of the people who mattered most. The music shifted to a slower, more melodic tune, and Alistair decided it was time to begin his performance. He reached into his pocket and felt the cold steel of his limited edition watch, a piece worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. With a practiced motion, he slipped it into the pocket of his jacket, then turned to his guests with a look of sudden manufactured panic. He announced loudly that his watch was missing, a family heirloom passed down from his father. The room went quiet as Alistair's gaze landed directly on Maya, who was standing near the buffet table. He walked toward her, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor like the beat of a war drum. He accused her of being the only person who had been close enough to him to take it, letting the accusation hang heavy in the air. The guests whispered among themselves, their eyes turning toward Maya with judgment and suspicion, fueled by the biases they carried. Maya didn't flinch, nor did she lower her gaze. She stood tall, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She calmly stated that she had not touched his watch and had no interest in his belongings. This response only enraged Alistair further, as he had expected her to beg or cry for mercy. He demanded that his security detail bring her personal bag from the staff locker room immediately, claiming he wanted to prove what kind of person he had hired. When the security guard returned with Maya's small, weathered leather bag, Alistair grabbed it with a sneer. He held it up for everyone to see, mocking the quality of the material and the humble life it represented. He told the crowd that people like Maya always tried to steal a piece of a life they could never truly belong to. With a dramatic flourish, he headed toward the large silver trash bin in the corner of the room. Alistair turned the bag upside down, and the sound of items hitting the metal bottom was jarring in the silent room. A set of keys on a simple ribbon, a small bottle of floral perfume, and a worn-out wallet fell first. Then came a few crumpled receipts and a small, gold-framed photograph that landed face down. Alistair laughed, telling the guests that this was the sum total of a life spent in the shadows. Maya took a step forward, her voice low and steady, warning him not to touch her things any further. There was a sudden authority in her tone that made a few guests feel a chill down their spines. But Alistair was too caught up in his own cruelty to notice the change in the air. He saw a folded piece of heavy paper that had caught on the rim of the bin and reached for it, thinking it might be a pawn shop ticket. As he unfolded the paper, the light from the chandelier hit the official seal of a prominent genetic laboratory. Alistair's laughter died in his throat as his eyes locked onto the bold text at the top of the page. It was a DNA paternity test, and the results were stated with 99.9% certainty. He saw his father's name, Arthur Sterling, listed as the biological father of the person who had submitted the sample. His heart began to race as he looked for the second name on the document, expecting to see some stranger. Instead, he saw the name Maya Rose Sterling printed in clear, undeniable letters. The room seemed to tilt on its axis as Alistair realized what the document implied. This woman, the one he had spent months trying to crush, was not just a maid. She was his father's daughter, his own half-sister, and a legitimate heir to the Sterling legacy. The guests were starting to notice the change in Alistair's demeanor, their curiosity turning into a tense expectation. Maya stood perfectly still, her expression unreadable, as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. She watched as the man who had tried to trash her life was himself being dismantled by a single sheet of paper. The power dynamic in the room shifted so violently it was almost physical. Alistair tried to speak, but his voice failed him, coming out as nothing more than a dry croak. He looked from the paper to Maya, his mind racing to find a way to discredit the evidence in his hand. He accused her of forgery, shouting that his father would never have had a child with someone like her. Deep down, he remembered the stories of his father's missing years, and the woman he had spoken of with such regret. At that moment, the heavy oak doors of the penthouse opened, and an elderly man in a sharp gray suit entered the room. It was Mr. Henderson, the longtime legal counsel for the Sterling family, and the only person Arthur Sterling had truly trusted. He walked straight toward Maya, ignoring Alistair and the shocked guests completely. He bowed his head slightly in a gesture of profound respect that left the audience gasping in surprise. Mr. Henderson turned to Alistair and informed him that the document in his hand was indeed authentic. He explained that Arthur Sterling had spent the final years of his life searching for Maya and her mother. He had left a secret codicil in his will, one that remained sealed until Maya could be found and her identity confirmed. The lawyer's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of an approaching storm. Maya finally spoke, her voice clear and resonant, filling every corner of the vast room. She explained that she hadn't come to the house for the money, but to see what kind of man Alistair had become. She had wanted to know if the son Arthur Sterling spoke of with such hope was worthy of the empire he had been given. She told the room that she had found her answer in the way Alistair treated those he deemed beneath him. The guests began to back away from Alistair, sensing that his reign was coming to an abrupt and messy end. Maya walked over to the trash bin and reached in, her hand closing around the small gold-framed photograph. She wiped a speck of dust from the glass, revealing a picture of a beautiful woman laughing with a younger Arthur Sterling. Mr. Henderson then announced that according to the will, Maya was the primary beneficiary of the family's private trust. This trust held the controlling interest in the corporation, meaning Maya now held the true power over everything Alistair owned. She had the power to fire the board, sell the assets, or remove the CEO at her discretion. Alistair realized with a jolt of terror that the very chair he sat in was now hers to give or take away. Maya looked at Alistair not with hatred, but with a profound sense of disappointment. She told him that he had spent so much time looking down at people that he had forgotten how to look them in the eye. She then turned to the security guards and requested that they escort Mr. Sterling from the premises. She reminded him that, as he had so loudly proclaimed, there was no room for trash in this house. The transition was swift and absolute, as the elite of the city watched the Maid take her place at the head of the table. Alistair was let out in a state of shock, his expensive suit now looking like a costume for a role he no longer played. The guests began to flock toward Maya, offering their congratulations and trying to erase their earlier snubs. Maya greeted them with a polite but distant smile, knowing exactly who they were and what they stood for. Over the next few weeks, Maya handled the media with a poise that suggested she was born for this. She worked closely with Mr. Henderson to restructure the company, focusing on ethics and fair treatment of every employee. She turned the Sterling penthouse into a place of warmth and purpose, far removed from the cold museum of ego it had been. Maya never forgot the feeling of that uniform, or the weight of the silver tray in her hands. She used her wealth to establish foundations that supported workers' rights and provided scholarships for the overlooked. She became a symbol of justice, a woman who had walked through the fire of humiliation and emerged as a queen. Her story was a reminder that true nobility isn't found in a bank account, but in the strength of one's character. Alistair, on the other hand, found himself struggling to navigate a world where his name no longer opened doors. He had lost his company, his home, and his reputation in a single night of blind arrogance. He was forced to start over, learning that the people you mistreat on the way up are the only ones who can help you when you fall. It was a long and bitter lesson, but one that was necessary for his soul to find any semblance of growth. 1 year later, Maya stood on the same balcony looking out over the city lights, feeling the presence of her father in the wind. She had reclaimed her heritage, but more importantly, she had reclaimed her voice in a world that tried to silence her. She looked down at the small leather bag, now kept in a place of honor in her study, as a reminder of her journey. Maya knew that her mother would have been proud of the way she had stood her ground that night. The Sterling name was now associated with integrity and compassion, a transformation that many thought was impossible. Maya had proven that power, when placed in the right hands, could be a force for incredible good. As she turned to go back inside, she saw a new portrait of her mother, looking radiant and strong, finally taking her rightful place. Maya smiled, knowing that the circle was finally complete and the shadows were finally gone. The secrets were out, the debts were paid, and the future was finally hers to write with her own hand. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end of this powerful story of justice. If you found Maya's journey as inspiring as we did, please make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss a new upload. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and share it with your friends. We truly appreciate every one of you, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.